there are past, present, and people who are in the future in relation to the inner critic. The present was the stub toe. I tend to spend the majority of the time in the future, and in relation to the past, it tends to be solution orientated, meaning I did this, next time I'll do that differently. But all of the angst or inner critic comes from the future. What would you say to that, or what does that tell me about myself?
Well, first of all, I want to just say that it doesn't tell you about you. It tells you about your saboteurs and your inner judge, right? Because you, who you are, is this witness self, this wise self that's observing all of this, right? And it's important at this point to make a distinction here, because when you're looking at the future and you're going, what can I learn? What can I learn from this that I can apply? There's wisdom to that. So in the same way that, imagine you put your hand on a hot stove and you go, okay, there's intelligence. I've learned that I'm not going to do that again. That's we call that sage discernment. Whereas often what we do in the future when we're on an anxiety loop, we're putting our hand on and on and on the hot stove, and that's not actually helping us, because it puts our brain and our body chemistry into a state of fight or flight, and we're not really good with that. So people, there's a list of 10 key saboteurs, right? One of them being the hypervigilant, who is constantly looking at the future and worrying about what's happening. So fine being vigilant. These people have a real gift for spotting things that could go wrong and mitigating them. That's great. But people with a high hypervigilant saboteur are so busy mind sweeping and imagining everything that could go wrong that when it comes down to, and they're doing this for 100%, not 20% of the things that could viably go wrong, when it comes down to something actually being a real threat, they're not able to pay it the due attention because they're so exhausted after being in their head. So peak performance is really about letting go of that extra anxiety that our saboteurs create with the internal narrative that stops us being perfect, being able to perform. Whereas when we're in our sage brain, we can notice things objectively, we can take the lesson from it, and then we can decide from that space of perspective, creativity, resourcefulness, what would be the most productive response. But going back to what you said, what does it say about you? I would say, Thomas, go and take the positive intelligence saboteur test. It's free. It takes a couple of minutes and it's really, really enlightening. And it will tell me all about, or it will tell you all about your top saboteurs. And those are the different ways in which we get in our own way. So we may know a couple: hyperachiever, controller, restless, victim, avoider, pleaser, hyper rational, hyper vigilant. There's 10 of them. Go and have a look. But that doesn't tell you about who you are. It's your tendencies to it's how you talk about to yourself, and it's all the negative ways you get in your own way. So generally the idea is, when you're in that loop, when you're feeling negative emotions, frustration, anger, guilt, that's your saboteurs talking. And you stop, you do a rep, right? Could be this. The visual one is, what can I see in the far distance? What can I see in the near distance? Right? Or breaths, whatever it is, you bounce yourself out of that part of your mind. Oh, you're in a peaceful, resourceful state. And then what can I do next? But it sounds as if you're accessing that already by looking at the future and going, okay, what's the learning? What can I learn from taking my hand off that hot stove?